All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. So glad to be talking today. It is Tuesday, the 5th day of November. It's election day. Election day here in the United States, and we are going to be selecting who will be the next president. It's not going to be a re-election for Joe Biden, obviously, since he has withdrawn under tremendous pressure by Democratic leadership some time ago. So it'll either be Harris or Trump. Give me a call, 240-242-5646. Want to talk about your feelings? Want to talk about how you prognosticate this election coming up? We talked yesterday about this. I said I thought Harris probably would win. Now, I didn't vote for her and I didn't vote for Trump. So some of you might say, well, why'd you vote for somebody who wasn't going to win? Well, we'll talk about that too. I've talked about it quite a bit. I just don't see any real hope for a future, much of a future, with either of the two unitary party candidates winning. And of course, that's incredibly depressing. I know it's a bummer. It's like a downer, right? But I have some thoughts on how to move forward, regardless of which warmonger, pro-genocider, pro-corporate candidate actually does ultimately prevail. Would love to talk to you on your thoughts. How do we negotiate the darker, grimmer, grayer America that we have been experiencing? And it's going to get worse, I'm sure, before it gets better, but maybe there will be a light at the end of the tunnel, a light that isn't an onrushing locomotive. All right, there's your excitement. There's your fun. I'm sure if Arlen's listening, he's sorry he's not on right now. No, I bet he is relieved he doesn't have to listen to the gloom and doom. But if the positive of this, for me at least, is I won't be depressed, at least no more depressed than I am now tomorrow morning, whereas those of you, and I know there's some MAGAs and I know there's some Harris people out there, some of you are going to be really miserable tomorrow. And, yeah, I mean, it's the future is not looking great, to be perfectly happy. But you know what? It's worse in Gaza. It's worse if you're living in a country next to Israel. Then things are really, really, really bad. And I got to put a little Y there. I kind of forgot my Y. So yesterday, not one of the more bloody days in Gaza, but don't worry, Israel's already made up for it today. 17 reported killed in Gaza yesterday by Israel, and that brings the total close to 43,400. Today has started off with a bang, a very, very bad bang for so many of the people in Gaza who are watching themselves be eradicated with zero help from the U.S. Well, help for their killers, right, from the U.S. government, and that will not change. 54 killed today by attacks on Gaza from Israel since dawn, and there you can see shrouded corpse. It's not just Gaza that Israel is besetting, is crushing under its boot with the full and unwavering support of the Harris-Biden administration. Israel's war making, its war crimes, its atrocities have been expanded into Lebanon, and we've discussed that, and also they've attacked Syria and the West Bank. So recent Israeli West Bank raid has led to 7 more deaths, and we've got over 3,000 killed in Lebanon. So it says has killed 3,000. This is from TRT World. Has killed 3,000 people since October. I think they mean this year. They say last year. I think they mean this year, because the Israeli attacks in Lebanon began last month. And just one more image. So you understand, we're going through this election. It's very stressful. It's very anxiety provoking. There's little or no hope in the Palestinian lands surrounding Israel, or that have been incorporated into greater Israel, or for the Arabs who live in Lebanon. And it's not just Arabs, there's Christians, there's Druze as well. There's very little hope for them. Syria, too, again, under attack now from Israel. And there's a 14-year-old teenager. His funeral. I did want to share with you, by the way, I think I figured out that problem without getting the ringers yesterday, because I got a call yesterday and it didn't ring and I was all frustrated by it. I just have to play with it a little bit beforehand. Again, Google doesn't want to disturb you. So you have to make sure it knows that you want the phone to ring before it will ring. And I have it set up so that it'll ring so I hear it, but nobody else does. But I have to be fiddling around with it a little bit before the program, which I did, and I tested it. I wanted to kind of go over my thought process in my, what do they call it? A thumbnail, I guess, or I don't know, meme. It's not really a meme. Mine was pretty busy today. I went to a lot of work. I did a lot of work on it, but sometimes that's not good, right? Sometimes it's better to be just simple and come up with a very simple theme. Today's was busy. There's a lot in there. I put the title underneath too, but I just want to go through it. So there you see the Monopoly man, Uncle Moneybags. And he's cheering, he's throwing his money around, he's got his pins on. Oh, it's really clear, but I put the names there, Harris MAGA. So he wins either way. He's got pins for both of them on, and he says, I win. And then you see a homeless person who's got his little rucksack or backpack on, and he's got a sign that says, need food. And then he's got woohoo, like question mark. Yeah, you win, not so good for me. And that is what we're facing right now, right? Is the elites win, the billionaire class wins no matter who ultimately gets more electoral votes. The billionaire class will win. I think everyone else would kind of lose. I mean, even if you're, and I always say it, I'm privileged. I'm doing fine. To be honest with you, I don't even know how the billionaire class wins, really, because they live on this planet. I know there's ideas from Musk and from Bezos that they can colonize Mars or something. Yeah, go live on Mars. That's fine. Go to Mars. The fact of the matter is, it's not great being in America today. And even if you're a billionaire, the things that billionaires I always would have thought enjoyed, kind of the same things I did, maybe, but to a greater degree, skiing, the great outdoors, they're less pleasant, right? They're less enjoyable. You play golf, but you can't play golf like you used to because it's so hot so often. Courses are sometimes underwater. They're inundated. You can wall yourselves off. It's true. But you can't wall the world out. This is not really ultimately, it's a win relative, obviously. The billionaires are getting richer and everyone else is getting, the shaft. But absolutely, I can't believe they look at this world and think this is a great place for me to be. But maybe they're just figuring we'll get to repopulate it after the deluge. So there's Mr. or Uncle Moneybags. That's what he called Uncle Moneybags there with his Harris and his MAGA pin, and he's saying, I win. And of course, the impoverished person, no. Woohoo. It's a little bit busy. I get it, but I wanted to put it all in there. Election day in Amerika, 5/24. I spelled it with a K. And after I spelled it with a K, I looked it up because I was like, what does the K really mean? I know it's kind of ironic. I know the K is kind of a maybe sardonic is a better word, bitter, right? There's bitterness. So I looked it up, because I didn't want to just kind of be precious with a different spelling. And maybe it's also a little bit weird, or like, why are you doing that? I know there people used to spell it that way. I think there's the USA by Dos Passos, and I think that for some reason that sticks in my mind as kind of a origination of the spelling America. Maybe it's on the cover with a K. I'm not sure, but no, it says USA. In the 60s and early 70s, the Yippies sometimes used America when referring to the U.S. According to Oxford, it was an allusion to the Russian and German spellings of the word and tend to be suggestive of fascism and authoritarianism. So I think it's appropriate. Yeah, we have some trappings still in America of democracy. We are voting, and probably the person who gets more votes will be president, but not necessarily. There's plenty of precedent for that not being the case. And I'll tell you something that's really worrisome in terms of having a democracy, or a republic, as conservatives often want to say, oh, no, it's not a democracy. People don't get to decide. They elect people. They choose who will decide for them. And so you have a ruling class, an elite class, which conservatives, I think, often support. They're tend to be more hierarchical, believe in the fact that, believe that certain people are better equipped to decide for others how their lives should run. And I don't disagree, right? I think there are some people who are clearly better leaders than others. Some people would make better decisions than the populace as a whole. The problem is, how do we identify those people? How do we determine who should rule? And the way we're doing it now isn't working very well because there's so much money, there's so much influence by very small, narrow group of people. And then again, our system doesn't even necessarily lead to the winner among a small group, right? Because no one chose Kamala even to be, no, voters did not vote. We did not choose Kamala to be the Democratic nominee. She was chosen by Nancy Pelosi, I'm guessing, Barack Obama, maybe, although I heard Obama did think there should have been some, at least, appearance of say by the electorate, by the Democratic electorate before the nominee was picked. But, I guess there was a decision in a smoke-filled room. Some billionaires got in it and they said, hey, the best thing for us, we love Kamala. She's going to do what we want. She's just going to be a yes woman for our policies. She's not going to do anything unexpected the way Trump every now and then does. So let's just go with her, and the people will swallow it. They'll take it. And especially because look at the alternative. He's arguably even worse. Arguably even worse. And that's true. So I don't consider this is not democracy. This is authoritarianism. This is rule by the elites, by the corporate class. And that's not democracy. That is some mixture of fascism and authoritarianism. So I think it's not unfair in the least to spell America today with a K. By the way, call in 240-242-5646, 240-242-5646. I dislike intensely the Electoral College. I get there may be a few marginal benefits on the edges. For example, one would be that it should force Democrats to try to appeal to rural voters. It should force them to do that. It doesn't, but it should. But that said, every American should have the exact same say in who our leaders are, and that's not the way it worked with the Electoral College. So I have a big problem with that. But I have another problem that could really reflect that we don't live in democracy, and that is, what if there's a tie? And it's certainly plausible. If there's a tie, then even assuming for the moment that the Democrat Harris gets more votes, perhaps many more votes than Trump, Trump will almost certainly become president because the House of Representatives, which is currently under Republican rule or misrule, if you will decide. Now, the way that works is it's not just even a majority vote of the House. It's each state delegation gets one vote, which I think also leaves out the District of Columbia, for example. Each state delegation gets one vote. That would obviously give rural states even a more disproportionate say. Vermont, which would be obviously a Harris vote if there's a tie, but it would be outweighed, by many small states like, population-wise, obviously physically Wyoming's a large state, but population-wise very small. Wyoming, Idaho, all those, large states with empty spaces, wide places, big places, empty spaces. They're going to vote if they get an opportunity for Trump. And what seems even more wrong about all this is what happens if Trump loses Iowa, which he could, according to the gold standard pollster Ann Selzer. He's behind in Iowa. He should lose Iowa. He could lose Iowa, but if there's a tie in the Electoral College, I haven't gone through all the numbers to figure out how that would happen, the scenario, but if it happened, even though he lost Iowa, presumably he would get the Iowa vote because in the Congress, because there are more Iowa representatives who are Republican. That's so undemocratic. That's so wrong. So just the idea that we live in a democracy is clearly, belied by these realities. Probably it won't come to that. It could. Who is currently favored? Now, I have said it. I'll say it again. I think it's Harris. I do. I mean, to me, she's favored. I don't make the odds. I don't decide. Just looking, and I really don't care. You may find this hard to believe. I mean, I don't want the race decided by Congress. I don't want the House of Representatives voting for Trump when he gets fewer votes than Harris. And if Harris gets the most votes, I guess she should be president, even though she was selected in such an undemocratic way by the billionaire class. But yeah, I mean, given what we're facing right now in terms of an election, in terms of who's in it, if she gets more votes than Trump, she should be president. Now, if he gets more votes than her, the same rule would apply. He should be president. But I don't want Congress deciding. I think based on the recent polls, first among them, that Iowa poll showing Harris ahead, but also a number of polls that I've cited to you last week where she seemed to be opening up a lead, especially in Michigan, tied in PA, maybe ahead also in Wisconsin. I'm saying to you that I think means Harris will probably prevail. Interestingly, I guess you could say that so does Nate Silver. I'm not going to go through all that with lots of polls today. I'm not going to go through, the odds in Vegas. I'm only going to quote or show you this email I got, a few sections from the Silver Bulletin. That's what Silver calls it, right? Because his name is Silver, so he calls it Silver Bulletin. Now, I don't think that's, by the way, as good as Halitics. Now, maybe you do, but I think Halitics is a hell of a lot better name than Silver Bulletin, but he's, I guess he's got millions of followers, whereas I most certainly don't. So maybe Silver Bulletin is a better name. I don't know. According to Silver, by the way, according to my numbers here, I only have one of you watching. I don't believe it. I got to believe there's more than that. 240-242-5646. It's been funny because I've seen that number, and then I've had a few people commenting at the same time. So I'm like, well, there's no way it's one if there's two people commenting at the same time. Just real quick, Emogi commenting, he called yesterday. Great to hear from you yesterday, Emogi. Random people off the street would be better leaders than the status quo. 100%. 100% on that. I would greatly prefer that we chose at least one of the two houses of Congress by some type of random ping pong balls in a big thing or some kind of lottery of some sort. It would absolutely result in a much more representative, and I believe also much more caring, much more decent subsection of Americans if we did not have elections for Congress. Now, I do think people should get to choose, but if you have a random sampling, then that is the people. And the way we do it now rewards wealth. It rewards certain facility with language, a certain glibness that does not serve us well. I still love democracy. I think we should choose leaders, but we need to come up with a better system than the one we have now. By the way, my eyes are really itching me. Sorry about that. So according to Silver, back to Silver, he did 80,000 simulations using his algorithm, which weighs all the polls, but he weights some polls more heavily than others, depending on the reliability of the pollster, the accuracy that the pollster has demonstrated over time, the number of, how close the pollster has generally come in the past, as well as obviously recency bias. So a more recent poll is going to have more impact on the ultimate outcome than an older poll from the same pollster. So there's all manner of factors, and Silver's been pretty reliable. Now he did have Clinton, Hillary winning in 2016 by 2/3 likelihood. His model said she was about a 65-70% favorite. She lost, so that's a pretty big miss. I think that's a pretty big miss. But people have pointed out to me, hey, it's just the odds. It's just the odds. Every now and then, a long shot comes in, so it happens, and I'm inclined to agree with that, right? That said, Silver now has it virtual dead, practically a tie. 80,000 simulations. Harris wins 40,012. I mean, but for all intents and purposes, that's an absolute tie. It's pretty amazing. We have that in the Electoral College. Trump's president. I don't like that. That's what I highlighted there. Would probably be resolved for Trump, the U.S. House. Assuming he gets fewer votes, it should be Harris. It's amazing. So he has a dead heat. I'm surprised, because if you've been reading Silver, he's pointed out that higher quality polls favor Harris, that there seems to be a shift towards Harris. Now, this has occurred while early voting has been transpiring. So it's odd a little bit to me that Silver hasn't, that his model, I should say, hasn't shifted to, a significant, a meaningful, a noticeable, shall we say, advantage towards Harris. But it hasn't. And that may mean I'm wrong. It may mean that his model hasn't fully captured the situation on the ground. 240-242-5646. So I got a lot here. It's a clip here. So let's now I'm going to start. So one of the issues I've really been wrestling with here is, how do we make a difference? That's what I've been all about forever. That's why I started the radio station back in Monterey. Bought a radio station and then started a new and repurposed it as Progressive, was because I wanted to make a difference. I saw the way many things were going and didn't like it. And I thought, well, I got to do what I can do. I think the way we do that is we work together. We find common ground with people who have similar interests. We work across the aisle, not with politicians necessarily, but with people, with human beings. We build a movement. What is so disappointing about this woman on the screen there, AOC, is she's done just the opposite. She's become a hyper-partisan. She's demonized the Republicans, Republican voters, and even worse, Greens. And I say even worse because they share her values to a degree, at least her stated values, to a great degree, more than many, if not most, Democrats. But let's play this clip. This is from Chris Hitchens. It's one of those little shorts. I really like it, and but I don't love it.
What are your thoughts on the prominent right-wing figures such as Candace Owens, Alex Jones, and Tucker Carlson who have come out against American funding of Israel's genocide? Well, there are no permanent allies. There's only permanent power. So I can make alliances of anti-militarism with people whose, on many other opinions, I disagree. And I think that's...
Well, let me stop it right there. So, of course, that's right. You know, there's great evil in the world right now, whether it's what Israel's doing in Gaza and in the rest of the Middle East. There's great evil in our promoting endless proxy war with Russia rather than trying to stop it, working with other countries, other nations in the region and around the world to stop it. There's evil in what Russia did as well. There's great evil in the world, and to the extent we can find common ground with those who have different values on other issues, we should, of course, do it. There's no question. And yet, over and over, we see the hyperpartisanship raise its ugly head. We hear many hosts who, so-called progressive hosts saying you can't ever talk to these people. You can't, if you even acknowledge there's any decency in them, you're as bad as they are. You're enabling, they're Nazis, and so are you if you don't demonize, Republicans at every turn. And Hedges is saying that's a load of crap. So, of course, he's right. It is a load of crap. We need to figure out how to work together to accomplish good things. No question about it. Let me play a little more, though, because he kind of gets something wrong here, and I really want to call that out. So, get that. Two shakes of a lamb's tail. Again, if you want to join, 240-242-5647. What are your feelings? How are you feeling right now? Are you just pessimistic, miserable? You feel like there's no hope? Or do you have some optimism? I actually have optimism. Hard as it may be to believe. I think there's a lot of bad stuff, but I have some optimism. Here's more from Hedges on working across the aisle.
The infantilism of the left is that it seeks ideological purity and good organization.
And that's where I want to stop it. That is so false. The left I've never seen it seek ideological purity. You saw AOC go up there and deliver that ringing endorsement for Harris. And nobody could be less ideologically pure than she is. There's not even any such thing as ideological purity. There's no way there could be, because there are nuances to every issue. And people who call themselves, even if you're a socialist or a communist, there's going to be two people who are equally good socialists who disagree on how to handle a particular problem. So there's not even such a thing as ideological purity. And the left, without question, doesn't demand it, as you saw from AOC, from Bernie, out there hitting the stump for Kamala. There's no demand whatsoever for ideological purity. I wish they would demand a little more ideological purity. No, of course you can't. But at least demand that they be on your side, that they want to make things better, that their record demonstrates a real concern for life. But there's plenty of people left who don't even go that far. So Hedges just got that completely wrong.
Don't seek ideological purity, they seek effectiveness. I have done.
So he's saying what you should seek is effectiveness, not ideological purity. Well, I think you should seek both. I mean, yeah, you want to work with people to the extent you can get positive change, pro-worker change, pro-human change, pro-biodiversity change. Yes, those are all really good things to seek. But effectiveness for the sake of getting something, no. No, because look, AOC and Bernie may well be effective this race. They're putting their thumbs on the scale for Harris could really make the difference. It could lead to Harris winning. So I guess to that extent they're effective, but are they going to get the kind of change that our nation absolutely, our world absolutely requires? We're practically on life support as it is, given the climate catastrophe. So effectiveness, but define effectiveness.
With groups on particular issues that I don't agree with. I mean, for instance, I've joined members of the Christian right, who I describe as Christian fascists against pornography. I have joined groups on the left that I don't agree with to protest war in Iraq. That means that you can't be silent on the other issues. But alliances are always shifting in effective organizing.
Well, of course, that's correct. Yeah, there's no question about that. And it's funny because I've heard plenty of leftists when I was an organizer, professional organizer, we talk about that. We say, hey, no permanent allies, no permanent enemies. But it's a load of crap. It's just a saying because there are your permanent allies. You're always allied with, if you're a progressive group, you're always allied with Ro Khanna. You're always allied with AOC. You're always allied with Bernie. You're never going to challenge them. You're never going to question what they're doing. If you're PDA, if you're Our Revolution, I give DSA a lot of credit because they actually have stood up and said, no, we're not going to endorse AOC. No, we're not going to endorse Harris. But that's somewhat rare. Most groups, especially on the left, much more so than on the right, they view the Progressive Caucus as their ally. Period. End of story. And Republicans, they're the enemy no matter what. So it doesn't matter if Marjorie Taylor Greene votes against funding the potentially existential, threat of war with Ukraine, permanent war with Russia, war in Ukraine, permanent war with Russia. Doesn't matter if she votes against, she's still your enemy. So, he can say that. And that can be, something that we on the left or progressive organizers say. But it's in reality, it's BS. They're your permanent ally on the left that they talk to you. If they'll come on your Zoom meeting, if they'll give you a little bit of access, then they're your ally. Doesn't matter how they vote. Doesn't matter whether they support Hakeem Jeffries for House Speaker. Doesn't matter. House Leader. Doesn't matter. Climate defiance really disappointed me. So this is a group, I actually worked with them. I went on kind of broke up a meeting that was involving Shelley Moore Capito, I believe. She is the other corporatist, pro-coal, pro-fossil fuel industry senator from West Virginia. There's Manchin and there's Capito. So they have two terrible, terrible, terrible senators there. We broke up a meeting she was at where she was promoting, some trade deal or something of that sort. And I really appreciate that this group would go in and disrupt. We do need to disrupt. We need to stop business as usual. And I get this email yesterday, 6:27 p.m. It's a fundraising email. Jill Stein, yuck. No permanent allies, no permanent enemies. I guess Jill Stein's a permanent enemy. Why? Because she's going after the pro-fracker, the pro-oil and gas industry, Kamala. How? This is where you just lose your mind. I lose my mind. So this is who climate defiance wants you to vote for.
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president, you said you wanted to ban fracking. Now you don't. You wanted mandatory government buyback programs for assault weapons. Now your campaign says you don't. You supported decriminalizing border crossings. Now you're taking a harder line. I know you say that your values have not changed. So then why have so many of your policy positions changed?
So my values have not changed, and I'm going to discuss every one of at least every point that you've made. But in particular, let's talk about fracking, because we're here in Pennsylvania. I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States. And in fact, I was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which opened new leases for fracking.
All right, so that's who climate defiance supports. That's who they endorsed. You say to yourself, I say to myself, what do I do? It's learned helplessness, right? Where do we go? You watch the climate catastrophe, the climate holocaust unfold, and both major parties are all in for drilling, for mining, for fracking. So you got that. And on public lands too, doesn't matter where. So there's learned helplessness. Where do we go? You watch the major parties all in for genocide. We got to keep force-feeding Israel as many bombs as they want, as many machine guns as they want, as many high-powered rifles as they want so they can shoot Palestinian children in the chest and head. We got to keep doing that. Both sides say it. So again, learned helplessness. Where do I turn? Do I turn to a progressive group that says they're going to hold both parties accountable? A group that is clearly, at least through everything it says, and much that it did, trying to stop the climate catastrophe, the cataclysm, the existential end to, biodiversity to a great degree, and especially to complex organisms that are, beset now by a remarkably changing climate that's changing, rapidly heating up to a degree that's never before been seen. And we're threatened by all of that. And climate defiance is saying, we want to stop this. We're going to stand in the middle of the road and say, stop. And then they go after Jill Stein. Again, where do we turn? What do we turn? I found a group I'm going to talk about in a little bit. But before I get there, I just want to go back to the one I mentioned, Our Revolution. I want to go back to them real quick because, again, we've got to come up with ways to fight this. And I always want Halitics to be the center, right? I want it to be where we talk about solutions, which to me has to be voting for pro-people, pro-life, pro-peace candidates. But there is a role, I believe, for organizing, for sure. There has to be. And I did work again for Our Revolution. I sent them questions. I've been completely ghosted. The leader of that group will not take my calls, will not respond to my emails. I had an opportunity. I blew it when I could have confronted them with the questions I'm going to show you now. But these are the kind of questions that say to me, we don't have friends. We don't have allies. So they said, well, we didn't endorse Harris. They were out there organizing for her, sending volunteers up to Pennsylvania, condemning Trump at every turn, fundraising off of her. So if you haven't endorsed her, you are certainly trying to convince Pennsylvania voters to support her. How'd you make that decision? Who decided that? Who thought that was a good idea? Because you didn't have a vote. In the past, Our Revolution has made endorsements, at least in Maryland, where I used to, started out organizing for them, we would have ballots. We would send to our activists, who do you support? And then we would base our endorsement on that. Our Revolution didn't do any of that. Well, they didn't endorse. They just said, we're going to go help her out. And they even acknowledged in a mailing that many, if not most of their activists, those who were involved in the group, didn't even want her, didn't like her, don't support her, think she's just as bad or almost as bad as Trump. So how'd you decide? What was the basis for that? Is that what Ro Khanna told you to do? They won't answer. They don't tell me. These are really important questions. If you're going to support a group, if you're going to be part of a group, let's find out why. Because otherwise, they're not on your side. Otherwise, they're just looking for access. They're looking for fundraising opportunities. So we got to find something else. What, if any, policy commitments or promise appointees did you get? Did you get something out of your support for Harris? My guess is you got nothing. Nothing. You might have gotten a threat from the Progressive Caucus, CPC. You want to work with us? You got to play ball. I don't know. And what about Stein? She's actually the one whose positions mirror yours. Our revolution, totally anti-fracking. The big deal about that, we've got to stop it. Our revolution, completely for Medicare for all. She was for Medicare for all. Demilitarizing police. That's Jill Stein. That's her. That's right up in her wheelhouse. And none of that is Kamala. But they endorse her, or they're working for Harris. Why? And why didn't you consider, if you didn't, Stein? We need groups. We need organizations that are going to be unabashedly progressive, that aren't going to bend their knee to corporate hacks. They talk about making Harris accountable. How? She's movable. You can hold her accountable. You didn't hold Biden. There's no holding anybody accountable. The only time you can hold these people, the only time you have any influence over them whatsoever, is if you withhold your vote for them. And until until then, or until you're willing to say, we will only support you, we will only ask our members to vote for you if you do this. That's the only way you have leverage. Because you don't have the billions of dollars, you can't bundle millions and millions of dollars. And you gave it all away. Gave all that potential influence away. And finally, maybe, one of the arguments I hear from some of you who think we should support Harris, who think I should vote for Harris or should have voted for Harris, is, well, she's so much better. She really does care for the Palestinians. Okay. What are her policy proposals that you like? What are consistent with your values? And if the argument again is, well, it's not necessarily that she's articulated progressive views, but we think we can move her. Well, why? Because there's going to be some surge of demands from the progressive left? What we've seen over and over is that the progressive left seems to only get involved when there's a Republican. The pro-peace movement only gets its gears moving when there's a Republican who's fighting or making war. Not when it's Obama, not when it's Biden. And we really didn't have the opportunity to be pro-peace, particularly under Trump, because he didn't start any new wars. That said, when he tried to push for peace, for example, by cutting off Ukraine, he was impeached. Oh, somebody called and did I miss you? You know what? Call right back. I am sorry I missed your call in the 703. If you were trying to reach me, I don't know why it didn't ring. I'm going to see if I'll try that now. Yeah, see, I can hear it ring, but yeah, so there, I hear that ring, although that's kind of weird because it could be going the other way, I suppose. Maybe I have that wrong. I think that should be the 19. Yeah, let me get this correct. 240-242-5646. I'm going to try one more time to hopefully get a call and take it. If I can get my lines unclogged here. I know it's always great video to have me doing my work at this moment, but I think I did fix it. There we go. That's ringing. That's ringing. I don't know if you heard that. I decided before I get into that, well, Workers Strike Back. This was a story. We'll talk about Workers Strike Back. That's the group I decided I'm going to try to work with. That's my newest help. That's Shama Sawant. She is a Seattle former council member who was not a Democrat. Social, I believe it was called Socialist Alternative was her group. Now she started Workers Fight Back. I hope there's some serious organizing going on and we can build a group. I'm not totally certain that will happen, but I'm looking, man. I'm looking for something. I have not covered this story. This is something that just kind of fell through the cracks. And it's an important story. You know, we want to cover labor, we want to cover workers, but I'll just talk about this briefly. Boeing factory worker strike ends as workers vote to accept contract. The contract is good, I think. I mean, I looked at this and I thought, wow, they're making pretty good money as machinists. Now, it's a skilled job. They should make money, but it's problematic because what they're making is more, and what they'll be making is a lot more than pretty much all, I guess, most blue-collar workers. Not all, but most make. And I understand a machinist is highly trained, highly skilled, and that's really good. They should be paid a lot. I'm not saying they're overpaid, but what we'll see is we're going to see there's going to be some resentment. Some workers will point fingers at each other, and what you get is, again, a society where there's winners and losers. So the machinists, because they're members of a union, because they have a high degree of skill, and also because there's not a lot of airline companies, right? There's two. Or airplane manufacturers. There's two. There's Boeing and there's Airbus. So it's not like Boeing has the leverage to say, well, you know what? And they pretty much sell all the planes they make, or pretty close to it. The industry is very profitable. They want to keep making money. So they don't have a lot of options right now besides giving in to those workers. And it's also would be very, very difficult to offshore the job. So machinists will get paid decent wage. Will rise to $119,000. Not bad. But every worker deserves a living wage. And we used to have that when we were much closer when there was much higher union density. You can see how important unions are, but also trade. We need to protect American jobs and bring them back with tariffs. No question. That's why the reason the Boeing workers, at least these workers, have some leverage. Also, Biden didn't just say you can't, right? The Democrats just didn't pass some law saying you can't strike. You have to accept this deal. We're imposing it, which they did to the railway workers. The Boeing strikers didn't get everything. So their pension plan was not restored. Pension plans are very, very expensive for businesses. A defined pension plan, then they have to really set aside a lot of money. I get why they don't like it. And to me, it shouldn't really be the business's responsibility. I understand if it's negotiated and the labor owns it. But what we really need is a strong, buoyant, generous Social Security system that protects every worker in retirement. We need guaranteed single-payer health care from cradle to grave so you never have to worry about setting aside money for a health care emergency, which people do now. They have to pay for their dental. They have to pay for their hearing aids. That's absurd. Retirement homes are incredibly expensive. All of those are reasons that workers are rightfully demanding defined pension plans. Inflation isn't covered by Social Security. But that's why we need the government to step in and say, no, we all are going to get pretty much the same deal. It's going to be good for everyone. It might not be great for anybody, but it'll be good for everybody. Otherwise, you get winners and losers. You see these Boeing workers, people are going to be resentful. They're going to say, well, how come they're getting paid so much and I don't get anything? I have to work 3 jobs. I work just as hard as a Boeing machinist. I have to work 3 jobs just to make $85,000 a year. And I don't get health care. Here's why they made that deal, why they did it. Because they were losing a ton of money. They had no alternative really where they could go. But in the end, I fear these workers are going to lose in the end, because what will happen is Boeing will do everything it can ultimately to avoid manufacturing in union plants. So Boeing was losing so much money, $50 million a day from the strike, because they weren't making planes that they needed to make to sell, which had huge profits. No increase in wages for the non-union workers. I guarantee you, Boeing is looking at all manner of ways to get rid of those overpaid, as they see it, ingrates in Seattle. Finally, so the problem, and I do want to talk about just briefly why I want to go to, why I applied to be a member of Workers Strike Back. But just one more story. You know, I see this all the time. There's these arguments about the price of gasoline whenever there's an election. It's too high, it's too low. It's very, very frustrating. Because anybody who's paying attention has got to say we need higher gas prices. Because that's the only way we're going to save the planet. And yet the argument, the debate from Democrats, just as much, by the way, why do I see that? Let me get rid of that countdown timer, please. The argument from Democrats, just as much as Republicans, high gas prices are Republicans' fault, or they're this or they're that. But we want high prices. Well, they're coming down again. That just means more climate catastrophe, more. All this flooding in Spain, it's got to be. I haven't studied it, so I don't know. I could be wrong. But there was hundreds dead in Spain. Very likely that was a climate emergency, caused by a climate emergency. But the prices keep dropping. We're on a roller coaster, higher prices, lower prices. It's also bad for business because you can't plan. It's bad for consumers because they can't plan. The real solution is high taxes on gasoline so the price is stable. If there was a $5 surcharge on every gallon of gas, a drop of few cents a gallon would be meaningless. We would all be moving forcibly away from gasoline-powered vehicles. And a drop or a raise would be very de minimis. Those who say, well, and I've heard this over, of course, every single time. Oh, it's bad for consumers. Oh, it's bad for consumers. Oh, yeah, unless you return the money collected. And you return the money per person. So everyone gets the same amount back. You get money back. You're not going to want to spend that money on now much higher, more expensive gasoline. You're going to spend it on ways to avoid burning gasoline, ways to avoid burning fuel, whether it's buying that electric car, walking, biking, moving closer to the office. It'll also, of course, stimulate investment in clean, green energy. So this is the kind of story that I think people invariably get the wrong takeaway from. All that cheap gas, this is the direct result. 2024, the hottest summer to date. And we're way past that 1 degree Celsius mark. A lot of scientists said that was an important benchmark. We're way past 1 degree Celsius hotter than pre-industrial times. This chart, if you look at it, is pretty darn scary. This is a chart through August. We're now in November. So this is all the years are on that chart, starting with the 1960s. So I guess you're going back, I don't know how many years. the higher on the chart you are, the hotter each year is, each month, each year. The darker the line, the earlier. So the 60s are the darkest. It gets progressively lighter. The very darkest lines are the 60s, the earliest years on this chart. And you can see as you move up the chart, the lines get the curves. Obviously, it curves up in the middle. There's a hump there in July because July is the hottest month. January is the coldest month. December is the second coldest. So you see the hump. It's like a mountain. The darker lines reflect the earlier time period when it was cooler. So you can see very, very clearly, very distinctly how it's gotten consistently warmer and warmer and warmer. Now, what is really scary about this chart, to my way of thinking, is look at the red. That's last year. Look at how much of a change 23 was, even from the hottest years before then. Look at the amount of space there is in September, October of 23, August, July, September, October, between 23 and the rest of the years. We saw a huge jump. And the past 15 years have been the hottest 15 years. So it's not like 22, 21, 20 weren't that hot. They were super hot. But 23 was way hotter. And to date, 24 has been hotter still. That's what cheap gas does. We consume more of it because it's cheap. Some good news. Some might see it as good news. 24. Don't get excited if there's a Kamala Harris presidency. She ain't going to take on the oil and gas industry. She's already said she supports fracking. Nothing has changed. September 24 was the second warmest December. So it wasn't the hottest. So I guess we should be glad about that, right? It wasn't the hottest. 23 was the hottest. And September was the first month in 15 that wasn't the hottest month ever. The past 11 Septembers have been the warmest on record. So there you go. 50 consecutive Septembers with global temperatures at least nominally above the 20th century average. It just keeps getting hotter and hotter. That gas, cheap energy does. Just keeps getting hotter and hotter. Cheap fossil fuel energy does. Keeps getting hotter. All right, just about done with the program. Just a couple more thoughts. Saw this online. I wanted to just throw this up there. This to me was such a strange meme. I think that's what you call these things. It was such a strange meme. By the way, don't forget, click like, click subscribe to Halitics. In a few hours, we have a chance to do what Germany failed to do in 33. And I was like, we do? Really? So this was my response. And we'll go through the whole little back and forth, the colloquy. I never out people. I never put their names up there. I mean, I guess if they were famous, I don't see how there's any chance we do something differently than what Germany did in 33. So I wrote, not seeing it. Just like in 33 Germany, a genocider is almost certain to win today, right? So in 33, Hitler wins, and he had made pretty clear that he hated Jews. Jews were the source of all of Germany's problems. He didn't quite say he would kill them, but, it was, you could sort of read it between the lines. Kamala has said she would do nothing differently when it comes to Israel. She would not cut Israel off. Israel is committing genocide right now with our military support. Trump has said he wants it to go even faster. Finish the job. So, yes, we are in the same place as Nazi Germany was, or before Nazi Germany, Weimar Republic. So then the person writes back, hopefully we win. So I wrote Jill Stein, like when she wrote, hopefully we win, I thought, who is she talking about? Because my point, I thought it was kind of clear, but it wasn't. In response to, in a few hours, we have a chance to see what Germany failed to do in 33. So I'm like, not seeing it. How are we going to do something different? It's going to either be Harris or Trump, and they're both genociders. And so then the response is, well, hopefully we win. And I'm like, Jill Stein, you think she's going to win? I don't think so. So the response was, she is taking away votes from Kamala. I'm not sure if it's going to be significant or not, since we have Republicans who are voting Kamala, or maybe they will make up for those votes. So this person was saying no. Kamala is the one who's not genocider. I'm like, no, we're talking past each other. I want to be clear. We're talking past each other. Either way, whoever wins, we're going to be electing a genocide. It's so hard to get people to understand this, to acknowledge it. You don't want to believe it, right? You want to believe so badly my candidate isn't evil. I'm so much smarter. I'm so much more concerned, caring than those ignoramuses, those maggots, right? That's what you want to believe so badly. They're bad. They're stupid. They're ignorant. I'm good. Look at me. I'm voting for Kamala. Yeah. How good is that? Not good. All right, final point. Let me just put this up real quick. So I wanted to share with you my decision a little bit for what it's worth. And Workers Strike Back is like in 4 cities. Seattle, I told you Shama Sawant, she's big there. Also, Chicago, working class city, a lot of workers in Chicago. I guess I don't want to call it working class. Kansas City is interesting. They have a active group there. And I believe in Boston. And that's it. So I'm in DC. I'm far away. Hopefully, just hopefully, we can build something, because I just can't just rail and whine. Now, people say, well, hey, Hal, what are you complaining about? You get to do this show. No one's come to arrest you. And I'm grateful for that. I really am. But I think that the elites understand, first of all, they do sort of cherish a little bit free speech. And second of all, I'm no threat. This is no threat to them. There's no threat. Julian Assange was a threat. His life was destroyed. I'll be back tomorrow. We'll probably know who the president is. If we do know, I think then those of you who support the Democrat will be very pleased. I'll be back tomorrow. We'll go over whatever we do know about that election, what the results published at that point are, and we'll talk about them.